Welcome to this week's NeuroAffirm show. My name is Celina Wright, and I'm so grateful to be joining you with my guest, Casey, who will be introducing herself in just a moment. This is a really special conversation that we're letting you in on, and we can't wait to hear what your thoughts are. If you're not familiar with me, my name again is Celina, and I'm on the Inside Out team. I'm also on the NeuroAffirm Academy team. I've worked with Chris and Jesse for many years, and in that time, it's been wonderful to share mission and core values and get to partner in neurodiversity affirming practices and connect with this community who's committed to that as well. So, my time here on the show today is going to be spent sharing a bit of personal background with Casey. We both were talking before we got on this interview today and realizing that our stories converge in also the journey about being special needs parents. So we come to our work as clinicians, but as well as with this parent perspective that we think is really special, unique, and colors so much of how we show up in that space and in life in general. So I'm going to let Casey share a little bit more about herself, and then we'll get into our conversation for today. Casey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about all of this. And it's so nice to be here. My name is Casey Mouton. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in maternal mental health. And I also specialize in caregiver support and therapy for the parents of children with special needs. Like Celina mentioned, I am also a special needs parent. So this work is my professional passion, but it's also my personal passion.
Yes, definitely share that as well, that vein. My story of special needs parenting started many years ago, almost 21 years ago exactly. Our oldest son, Jacob, just celebrated his 21st birthday. I was telling Casey, I'm pinching myself that that milestone came around this week. And when Jacob was born, both my husband and I were navigating very young parenthood. And in addition, Jacob experienced a brain injury at birth that ultimately resulted in his diagnosis of cerebral palsy, of a seizure disorder, an intellectual disability. And that was a lot to navigate at the time. I didn't realize what influence that would have in all aspects of my life. I think in the moment we were just navigating the medical aspect of things, but it really has influenced every single part of our journey professionally as well. I don't think I would be a speech pathologist today had it not been for that spark and that introduction to that area of the field as a result of being the parent to Jacob. So I I really appreciated the pre-gaming that we were doing right before hopping on, and I look forward to expanding on that with you today, Casey.
Yeah.
I love what you were sharing about understanding the caregiver experience, and you were talking specifically about the mental health component to that.
hmm
Lots of clinicians tune in to the NeuroFirm show weekly, as well as parents. So I'd love to chat about that a little bit. What does it mean to prioritize mental health for the caregiver?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's imperative. And I think I was sharing with you before we got on that for most parents, I know myself included at times, um, caring for yourself kind of comes last on the list of things that you have to get done in a day when you're taking care of a child with special needs. We see burnout in caregivers kind of come to the surface when there's extreme exhaustion, extreme stress, and just less of an ability to cope. I know for myself, I can kind of sense that I'm nearing burnout when I know that I'm more reactive. I have less of an ability to kind of ground myself. I am quick to respond in an angry way, especially with my husband, which, I think when we think about this, a lot of that ends up kind of coming out in the relationship with a partner. Um, so yeah, it's absolutely imperative, and I'm hoping that by having these conversations, parents can feel empowered to take up space and to care for themselves.
Absolutely. I appreciate you giving those examples of how burnout can show up, the precursors or the actual manifestation
Mm-hmm.
when someone's actively in that state, because I think awareness brings power. If
Mm-hmm.
that understanding, we may not always be able to stave it off completely, right? But we can
Yeah.
help be preventative, take care of ourselves in a different way if we start to see these flags pop up and go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I've been here before. I'm recognizing this. That self-awareness component is very important. And wouldn't you say too, I love that we're sharing this today because it gives clinicians a window in. While I'm
Yeah,
sure a lot of clinicians are aware of what these flags look like, but it can feel very personal if you're on the receiving end as a clinician,
totally.
right? Have you experienced that before?
Yeah, and I think also I have probably had that response when I've been in the therapy room with my son. I know I spent many of his physical therapy appointments crying in the beginning days of his diagnosis. And yeah, it's something that I think for parents, when you've reached that point of burnout, it's hard to hide or mask it. So it's kind of like seeping to the surface in different ways. It can be really hard. And it is kind of in some ways like it's the time when a parent needs the most support, despite almost like the energy that they're putting out that's saying like, stay away from me.
Yes, that's important to realize as well. And yeah, it's hard to hide in those situations for sure. And we shouldn't, as clinicians, I think establishing rapport is always important for
Mm-hmm.
the caregiving network. And part of that rapport is that trust building and letting them know there will be time, there will be hard things we share in here. There will be a lot of achievements and progress that we
Yeah.
celebrate too. But the hard parts are just as important to be honest with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as clinicians, we can open an invitation for parents to the level that they feel comfortable and the level that we feel comfortable. But we could come to a consensus, don't you think, where we can open up this welcome mat to say,
Mm-hmm.
you know, share that with me. That's important because how you're operating, the mental space that you're in is so
Mm-hmm.
important to then this person's, the child's growth or the individual if you're
Totally.
yeah, and so I need to know how much do I give you in this
Yeah.
session versus, oh, do I need to let off the gas a little bit? I know that was something I learned as a clinician. I've made some stumbles, don't get me wrong. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
recognize those flags. And even being a parent myself, having lived some of those experiences, I didn't recognize. And so I pushed, I data dumped, I gave too much
Yeah.
information and I wasn't recognizing that. I realized it after, and I had to do some repair work on the back end. But that's an
Well,
very
I love your awareness of that, though. That's really, and I think, like you said, it comes from personal experience, right? Of being on the other side of that. I think I was actually talking to a friend about this the other day that it's really hard when you're in like IEP meetings or you are having conversations about, like, and the point of the meeting is probably to get services or to have respite hours increased or whatever it is that you need, but you're highlighting deficits for that. And that can take such an emotional toll on a parent. And so something that I love to think about in these situations when I know something like that is coming up, like an assessment or a meeting, I use this strategy of coping ahead. So I try to say to myself, okay, what am I going to need after this meeting? Do I need to call my best friend and just cry and talk and express? Do I need to go get a milkshake? Do I need to go like drive to a park and just sit in the grass for a little bit and take deep breaths? What can I kind of plan ahead for myself, knowing that some of these situations that we're talking about can be so hard? And maybe as clinicians, right, we can even ask our clients and the families we work with that question like, hey, we're going to have this meeting on Friday. I know it might be tough. What's your plan for afterwards? How are you going to take care of yourself after?
wow. I've never thought of a strategy like that, but it makes so much sense. I love that. Um, because in the moment you have to imagine that you're going to be dysregulated. And so
Totally. Yeah.
that's that part of your brain to plan for something that you need in that moment.
Hmm.
challenging already. So having, yeah, I love that. And it makes so much sense because in other areas of life, we talk about, you know, what is that? I'm forgetting the term of phrase, but it's you're going to, if you fail to plan to fail, something along those lines. But it's that idea that if we didn't think about it before, then it's going to be really challenging to do in the moment. So I love that you shared
Yeah.
that. And it can also work in the reverse too for therapists that we should,
Hmm.
well, if you know that you're going to be in a challenging experience, thinking to yourself, okay, how as a clinician am I going to
Right.
behave? What am I going to do after?
Right.
Works for
Yeah.
everyone.
I mean, I think about that a lot as a therapist. Like, what do I need after this session ends? Do I need to go get up, stretch my legs, talk to a colleague?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's important.
Important what you brought up too about the deficits based approach that's
Hmm.
often a default in circumstances
Hmm.
such as this, which I know a lot of people who watch the show are ascribed to neuroaffirming strategies. One of the tenets of that perspective is to be strengths based in your approach, and this speaks to that too.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to mention that again, because I know a lot of people will say, okay, this is that confirmation that I'm on the right path to
Yes.
neurodiversity affirming practices, because that will help. I mean, the new, I mean, we also want to be realistic and also talk about areas of need so that we can make progress towards the things that that individual or that family is
Right.
aiming for. But the delivery can be,
Right. Well, and I wish that that way of thinking and operating could be, that other kind of institutions and systems like the school system could adopt that and approach things from that place. I think it's great that, the therapists listening to this and engaging in the similar work are coming from that place because parents need that. We need that therapist that we know we can go to, and they're going to be like, your child is doing this, they're killing it in this way. And that's so reaffirming that, like, you're doing okay, you're surviving.
yeah, we spoke a little bit about that too earlier, where I was saying as a therapist, I also want to think about a parent's state of being doesn't translate directly always to their level of commitment, if we want to think of it,
Hmm.
right? The same parent sometimes can present a certain way most of the time, but then there could be this really challenging season related to their child or not. But then it could be manifested where it's important to hold those spaces to check in. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Just on a regular basis, so that if most of the time you're in my sessions with me, learning these strategies and practicing these strategies or sharing, connecting in that way, great. But if there are a series of sessions in a row where you need to sit and wait in your car so that you can listen to an encouraging podcast to
Yes.
refill your cup, or you need to sit in the waiting room and thumb through a magazine, we're going to have that dialogue and that connection piece where I understand where that's coming from and not interpret it that there's less commitment there
Yes.
than
Yes.
other times. Yeah, we
I
have.
love that so much. And I know I didn't share this in the intro, but so my son had a stroke when he was 10 months old. And so, we had like the early experience of raising a child that was able-bodied. And then at 10 months, it was like, okay, now you have to get into OT, PT, speech, like you got to get into all of it. And I would say for the first year, so much of my way of coping was extreme hypervigilance around my son. So I was at every therapy appointment. It was almost manic at times, like how intensely I was approaching his care and his therapy. And I can say without a doubt, like the greatest gift I gave myself for my mental health was letting other people take him to some of his appointments. And like you said, that didn't mean that I was a bad mom. That didn't mean that I didn't care. I was allowing other people to take that on so I could truly reset and like allow my nervous system to come down. And I think the clinicians that he was working with, it was so great too, because we could still talk about what was happening. They could still tell me, the other caregivers that would bring him would take videos sometimes of what was happening. That was always super helpful. But I think it's okay to give yourself permission to take a break.
Absolutely. And that touches on that point. We were hoping to share a handful of realistic tools,
Mm-hmm.
that one could do, parent primarily, since that's the viewpoint that we pour out from many times, you and I, but also clinicians can
Yeah.
take this and adapt it for what their needs would be. Because something I think when you throw out the term self-care or mental load or things like
Mm-hmm.
participating in self-care, the image, I mean, I'm sure if you just typed it in Google right now, like you'd see the cucumber eye
Mm-hmm.
patches and the hair towels and that sort of thing at a spa. And it's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes self-care can look like that, but other times self-care, I know even for me, sometimes that looks like pouring into work. There
Yeah.
were so many times with Jacob where I felt so helpless. I couldn't change a laundry list of things that were going on. I couldn't control people in the situation. I couldn't get regular nurses to show up for their shifts when we needed them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it goes on and on. But the thing I could control was showing up at as a clinician and
Yeah.
delivering as best, like the most incredible sessions that I could help produce for those children in those situations. And so I found myself doing that sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
that filled my cup because then I felt less helpless and that felt better then. And then
Yeah.
eventually, things would turn around in for
Yeah.
Jake and there's always a
Yeah.
simple thing with that. But in that moment, sometimes that looked like pouring into work and
Yes.
that was okay.
Yeah. I think the ways that I engage in self-care now, like my number one is reality TV, and I have no like resistance to that. I say that is my medicine sometimes, and I need that, and that's great. But I think the other things that I've tried to really lean into are this idea of being like a good enough parent, not like a perfect parent. So I just need to be good enough. Like, and that to me means, does my son feel loved? Is he safe? Is he being taken care of? Yes. And some days, like I think I said this to you earlier, that means I leave the dishes in the sink. Some days that means I don't pick up all the toys, and that's okay. I think the other thing that has been so important for my mental health is saying no and getting really good at saying no. Um, and that can be as simple as replying to a doctor or someone else like, no, I actually can't get those forms to you by tomorrow. It's going to take me a couple more days. Or I have even found myself like for my son because of his physical disabilities, going to birthday parties that are super physical, like at a gymnastics center or something that requires, like extreme physical strength, we sometimes just say no. And my son is happy about that. And I know it like creates a better kind of space for all of our mental health. He's not feeling left out. Um, it's it's less triggering for all of us, and I feel like that's okay to say no sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've talked this time of year, with the holidays and things like that. This topic comes up in our community and in various spaces. Chris and Jesse have talked about it too. What are some adaptations you can do to support a neurodivergent
Hmm.
individual? Sometimes it is that. It's that it doesn't have to look like going to every event,
Yeah.
or even when you are in that event, it doesn't have to look like you picture it always in your mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means taking space away while still there at that event, but taking
Yes.
moments out,
Yes.
whatever that looks like for that person. Yeah,
Yes. I could not agree more. And I think I want parents to feel empowered that they can do that, that they can say no, that they can parent in the way that they need to parent when they're at an event or something, right? And yeah, I think can bring up even grief for a lot of parents, which I see in my work, like the grief of being on a different parenting path, and parents feeling even uncomfortable addressing those feelings of like, I feel sad sometimes that I'm on this different path and different journey. And so I think just putting the message out there that that's so normal and perfectly okay to feel that at times.
Absolutely. Yes, that's important to know too. And that validation component, right? We
Hmm.
want to be thinking about that from a clinician's perspective. How can we validate it?
Hmm.
And it's important as a clinician to be in community with like-minded other clinic, however that needs to look. And the cool thing about this day and age is there can be a lot of virtual ways to do.
Yes.
If you find yourself you're a solo practitioner or
Hmm.
only person at the school who's committed to this approach, you can find community in that. And that's important too, to have sounding boards and say,
Yes.
my creative wheelhouse, this parent has put up this boundary, or like you said no to X, Y, and Z for this.
Hmm.
And I fully respect that. I want to get creative in how I can still help meet the need. Okay, I'm going to turn to my community here. What are some
Right.
thoughts? Because I'm, my creative side is drying up here. I need some infusion of ideas. So that could be one way that clinicians help support parents is simply by getting in community themselves to have other clinicians support them.
Yes. Yes. We all need that. And I think my number one suggestion always for parents early in the special needs parenting journey is like, can you find a support group? Can you find another group of parents that are in this same experience? It doesn't mean that your child has the same diagnosis or is kind of, dealing with a similar situation, but having other parents around you, just like you're saying, having other clinicians around you that can be there to support, to offer advice. I mean, community is everything. It's really everything.
Definitely, definitely. I know that we want to leave listeners or viewers today with a hopeful message too. I know that's where you and I operate from that as
Yeah.
well. So we were wanting to chat just for a moment at the end here of what message we want professionals who view and consume this content. What do we want them to take away in knowing about supporting caregivers?
Hmm.
And one of the things that we talked about was creating space for parents to,
Hmm.
that was really important.
Yes.
Curious if you have any other thoughts or mental.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think that sometimes, and this is all human beings, we shy away from a difficult emotion or a difficult feeling. And I think the best thing that we can do is sit with someone in a time of, emotional need or a time that is hard for them. Like I think about when I gave that example earlier of being in my son's physical therapy appointments, just crying for most of the sessions. I remember his therapist at one point just coming over to me and saying, like, how are you doing? I mean, it was probably obvious to her how I was doing, but she really was like, are you okay? Like, how can I help? What do you need? She gave me a referral to a therapist that she knew in the area. So just that kind of energy of, I think, saying, like, hey, I see you. This is really hard. Just allowing that conversation and space to be there is so meaningful to a parent.
Yeah, I think so too. And I want to take it back for a moment to that strategy you talked about for parents of knowing how you're going to care for yourself after.
Hmm.
I think then as clinicians, something we can do to support parents is give them those ahead of time
Hmm.
signs, letting them know, in about 3 months, I'll be producing that progress report that will go
Right.
into insurance. And like we've talked about, there might be some pushback on insurance of, continuing. So this is some things that we can talk about, making sure that we're documenting attendance rates, like all, like just giving them that. So you're not hit at the end with
Yeah.
like, why didn't you tell me this before? Or even if it's, we're going to be trying this new strategy and it might feel a bit foreign right now, and we might see a plateau in this area because all the
Hmm.
eggs are in this basket over here. I'm giving you that heads up so that when that does happen, it's like, you didn't tell me
Right.
this was, we could
Right.
that guide in a way, and that can also help support parents well.
Yeah, I think I use that with my young child, kind of front loading, telling
Right.
him like, hey, this is what's about to happen. This is what's coming. Yeah, I think, right, all of this too is just about transparency and openness. And like you were saying, building rapport and connection with parents. Because again, right, it's like so much of the focus is on the child as it needs to be. The parents are also having an experience. And so I think just, yeah, recognizing that, holding space and creating like a warm environment that a parent can say, yeah, it's been a hard day today.
Absolutely. I have loved this conversation. I know our collaboration won't end here, and I love that you're tied into this community
Yeah.
now. Invaluable. I know I've learned helpful wisdom nuggets that I'm going to take influencing my roles as a parent and as a clinician and moving forward as a result of this conversation. And we look forward to the listeners who are here for this episode to do the same. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me and talking with me through this. And um, yeah, if anyone has questions related to mental health or supporting a caregiver, can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is therapy period with period Casey. And please, I like welcome all of the conversations in DMs or whatever helps a clinician feel like they can support a family in the way that we've been talking about today.
Absolutely. And we'll put your how people can find you and connect
Great.
notes of this show as well. And if you've been listening to this as a parent, please know that our community is here for you. This NeuroAffirm show is a wonderful resource. You can search past episodes and find content that's pertinent to you. You can watch and re-listen as many times as you'd like to that information. So that is something I want to encourage you to use and have at your disposal. If you're a therapist and thinking, gosh, this community that you talked about, that sounds wonderful. I need that. I need more of this. Please feel free to reach out too. We have resources that are fitting exactly for that community that comes together in a real way to support each other and learn more about these neurodiversity affirming practices and the mindset, this paradigm shift that we are on. We're here at the forefront with you. And if you ever need information about that, please reach out to our team. You can do that through a variety of means, commenting on this episode, reaching out to our support channel, support@sensoryslp.com, and we'd be happy to share about what NeuroAffirm offers in terms of a global directory, a therapy academy. It's all there to help support and be this rapport, trust building space that we can all benefit from to help each other. So thank you so much again, Casey. Really enjoyed this
Thank
conversation,
you.
and I look forward to people's feedback on the show.